Hey everybody, my next guest today is Sydney-based artist Warrick Wong. I've met Warrick a couple of times throughout conventions in Australia and was always blown away by his incredible work. His artwork often depicts epic scenes of fights and battles, but also focuses on characters and how they overcome challenges, which is shared to his Instagram of almost 500,000 followers. Warrick works for himself but has also worked on projects such as Final Fantasy, TMNT Mutant Mayhem, Transformers Rise of the Beasts, and more. Recently, Warrick has also been working on an original book series named Kota, and is based on his children and the life lessons they learn along the way. In our chat, we talk about Warrick's art journey and what it was like taking his art full-time, and also overcoming the obstacles and challenges that he faced. I hope you enjoy this one. My first question, Warrick, is just a very general one. I always ask this to people whenever we begin the podcast, but if you could tell me a little bit about yourself as an artist, kind of the different cliff notes of your art journey and how you got started to where you are now.
So I've been drawing since I was a little kid, like most of us. I never did any formal training. I literally just did it as a hobby, all the way from primary school, all the way to high school and university. And at uni, I did something completely unrelated. It was industrial design. I hated it, wasted a shit ton of money doing that. But I discovered during that period that art is what I want to do. And then after that, I went to TAFE and I did this concept art course for a year. And that's where I met crazy, talented concept artists like John Park and Kekai Kotaki. And then that's when I started to realize, look, this is something that's really viable as a career. And that's when I started to practice every day, self-training, YouTube videos, and just grinding. And eventually over time, I started doing all these conventions. And then 10 years later, I'm here just doing this full time now. So that's my art journey in a nutshell.
Yeah, sick. Another
Mm.
thing I'm super obsessed with as well is just artist setups and looking at yours. There's so
Mm.
many, everything's so clean.
Yeah,
It's so nice. You can definitely
thanks, man.
see all of the different inspirations behind you. And
Yeah, for
did that
sure.
also, of course, just evolve over time?
Yeah. So you can see up there, Berserk. I'm a
Yeah, I
huge
saw all
Berserk
the red.
fan.
I was like, that's
Yeah.
definitely Berserk.
Yeah, so Berserk's one of my all-time favorite
Yep.
stories, and Miura is like one of my favorite artists, obviously. And behind me is Bryce Coe. I met him at Anime Expo last year, and yeah, just seeing how he conducts himself and the level of art he produces just inspires me. So I just keep him up there just to, stay on edge, make sure I'm always grinding every day. And I've got some of my favorite art books and um, a lot of the self-help books are there as well, like in terms of art, like Scott Robinson, how to draw properly, how to construct perspective and all that. So yeah.
Mm. I think I see framed ink as well up in the top left.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
yeah,
framed ink.
that's
Yeah. I discovered that during uni.
oh
Not
yeah.
uni. TAFE. My teacher taught me, referred me to that, and yeah, there's so much valuable information in that one. So I have it up there.
Yeah, absolutely. The thing I like the most about framed ink in terms of teaching composition is that it really breaks down the abstract nature of it, where it's not even
Mm-hmm.
the things itself that's in the image, but it's the flow of the image. And then you kind of
Yep.
like find the props of the characters in order to serve that, which is like
That's
very, very interesting.
that's right. Yeah, I apply so much of that into my own work today. So yeah,
Mm.
very very valuable.
Yeah, yeah. And yeah, moving to your work, it's very, very beautiful and very, very, there's a lot of energy in it that I've seen before. The flow of characters, the way that you do different fighting poses, or especially even things like cloths blowing in the wind.
hmm
How did your style sort of develop over time and how did it begin in TAFE to where it is now?
Right. So I did a lot of traditional drawing first, a lot of ink and ballpoint pen and brush pen drawings, and I think that's where a lot of that flow came from. Just having that ink just naturally just glide across the page, and then I use that knowledge and I apply that to the digital realm as well. And I just naturally was attracted to that style. So I guess that's just how my art evolved from there. And then I then implemented all my studies of anatomy and composition into that flowy style, and that's how it's ended up to how it is today.
Mm. Even at conventions, I see you all the time just drawing with ballpoint
Hmm.
pens and inks and all that kind of stuff too. It's definitely good to kind of keep those skills sharp.
Yeah, for sure, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, I found drawing traditionally keeps even the digital medium sharp as well, because
Mm, mm,
you have to stay loose, and all
hmm
that loose brush strokes then translates to the final image as well.
mm. Yeah, absolutely. I find too that going back to traditional, there's something sort of liberating and freeing about that because I don't have to think about layer management. I don't have to think about switching brushes. It's literally like, just an implement and then the actual canvas or paper itself. And
Hmm.
getting into that state or reminding yourself of that state is, as you mentioned, very freeing and yeah, liberating.
That's right. That's right. There's no undos, and there's a lot of happy accidents
Mm,
that you just, yeah, gives it a lot of
yeah.
life and character.
Yeah, 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 for sure. I think
Hmm.
it's going on my rant now of social media
Hmm.
and all that kind of stuff, but it's helpful to remind yourself that not everything has to be perfect. And when it
Hmm.
comes to art, something that I struggled with for such a long time is like every single color, every single, little bit and pieces here it all has to be perfect. But when you start to realize that you're abstracting things, you're having a representation and simplification of the subject matter, it's a lot easier to kind of view the picture as a whole, and
Hmm.
as a result I actually find that it makes the painting sessions go by way faster and not as
Hmm.
stressful.
Yep, 100%, man. Yeah,
mm,
that's why I always have to have 50% traditional, 50% digital, just to,
mm.
yeah, maintain that.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely
Hmm.
think this year something I want to focus back on more is going back to traditional, just to again remove all of those layers,
Mm.
and then if bringing it back into digital, continuing to work on it
Yeah, for
from that way.
sure.
But
Because I
that
remember your
initial sort
brother.
of
Yeah, go on.
oh,
Sorry,
so
go on. Go on.
Oh, I was gonna say the initial kind of like 30 minutes or just a quick sketch or whatever, that's enough to capture the energy itself, and then
Yeah,
anything apart from that's just the icing on the cake.
yeah, 100%. Because I remember when you and your brother first met me a couple
Mm,
years ago now. I think like your
yeah.
brother was telling me about his traditional. He's a traditional artist, right? Your brother?
Yeah, that's correct, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So that's cool, man. So it'll be cool to see you get back into that. See where
Yeah,
that
yeah, for
leads.
sure. I'm gonna
Yeah,
have to
yeah,
ask him for tons of advice as well,
yeah,
'cause, yeah,
yeah.
usually with digital stuff, he'll tell me, like, "Oh, how do you do this thing in Photoshop?" or whatever else, and now
Mm.
I'm like, "Alright, how do I mix?" How do teach
Yeah,
me, like, proper techniques again, which would be
yeah,
really
yeah,
cool.
for sure, man, for sure.
Yeah, I think so. So, in terms of the art journey and things too, you mentioned a couple of artists that you're really inspired by, but are there any
Mhm.
other couple of others that really take inspiration from?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Kekai Kotaki was definitely one. He was what inspired me to do all the really badass fantasy kind of illustrations. And we have Kentaro Miura, which is all his hyper detailed drawings, and he's got a lot of energy in his drawings as well. Where he's got when guts is going crazy, all the energy. And I also got uh what's his name? Terada Katsuya. He's got a lot of like surreal ink drawings as well. Obviously Kim Jong-gi as well. And I recently discovered this guy called Dirty Iron on Instagram. He does these really cool storytelling pieces, and it's just really crazy how he tells so much in just one image. Like he captures a full like movie in just one image. So that's what I'm trying to really work on now, just to really tell story through that one image. Yeah, so those guys there they're probably my top five guys that I really look up to and
Mm.
have really inspired me on my journey.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. The cinematic nature as well of your work, I think, is very inspiring just because of the details. There's so much flow in all of the different line works. And again, when you look at it as a whole, you can see what's going on. But when you go close, that's when you really get to understand all of the extra bits and pieces. And yeah, that's very cool.
Yeah, cheers, thank you.
Yeah. With different types of inspirations, not from an artist standpoint, but from movies and games standpoint as well, is there anything that you really like to gravitate towards or use for references?
um, uh, in terms of games, all like the JRPG character designs have inspired me a lot. So all the, like the classic Final Fantasy and even Kingdom Hearts inspired me a lot. And in terms of movies, I watch a bit of everything. Um, and it's just whatever. It's mainly for the storytelling because like I know I mentioned to you before that I'm writing my own story.
Mm,
So in terms of movies, it's just all the emotion and storytelling that I'm trying to absorb to incorporate into my own storytelling
Mm.
later down the track. And obviously, whenever I see a really cool like composition from a movie, I try and remember that, and I try and remember the shapes and the angles, and I also incorporate that somehow. So just as long as the story in general is really captivating, that's what I'm drawn to. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. With the book that you're developing, Princess
Mm.
Nissa, I believe that's
That one's already done. So that was like a
yeah.
prototype. So that was for my eldest kid. But this one I'm doing now is for all three of them together. And so the code name is COTER. So that's an
Okay.
acronym for what it's called, and
Yep.
it's going to be a fantasy story. So I'm in the works developing now. So you can see a little sneak peek here. I'm working on
Oh yeah.
one of the pages there. Um, but yeah, it's just the three kids going on a journey, defeating all these monsters that come from hell, and they have to protect their realm from this invading evil. Yeah.
Yeah, right. I remember too at the last convention we spoke at, you were kind of detailing the outline for the plans of
Mm.
the book and how that sort of materialized. And how's that been going so far? And when
Yeah.
creating a book, is there, how do you plan for something like that?
So the first Kickstarter, the Princess Nisa one, it taught me a lot. So I figured out how I got to prepare the file, send that off to the printers, how to organize the Kickstarter, and obviously fulfill all the orders. So now I know how to do all that. I've got a lot of experience for this one. The story is all done, and I just and all the concept art is pretty much all done now as well. So all I need to do now is literally just pump out the final illustrations, and so hopefully by the end of the year, it'll be ready for Kickstarter.
Yeah, awesome. That's
Mm.
very cool. There was a digital environment course I was doing with Yuki Dimas, who worked on Into the Spider-Verse.
hmm
And like the very first lesson, he talked about this concept called mise en place, which is like
hmm
cooking, where you have the recipe that you want to cook, and then you have all of the ingredients prepped up. You chop all the onions, you do everything, and then you just put it all together. So
Yep,
the
yep.
legwork that you're mentioning beforehand of getting all of the different pages, the concept art done, when you get to the stage of actually cooking, let him
hmm
cook. But when you get to that stage, is everything just so much easier to get through?
Yeah, yeah, it is. Because, like, the most stressful part for me is always having to come up with that initial idea and make sure it works well and there's no plot holes and the concept art looks really good and I'm happy with everything. Because
Mm,
then the worst part is you get stuck into the main bulk of the work and then you look at like the early development stuff and you're not happy with it and then you're like, oh, I've done all this work for nothing. So yeah, it's always that initial planning stage, which is the most stressful part. And now that I can just cook, as you say, yeah, it's just really stress free. And I'm literally just thinking of like, oh, this will be cool if the kids go on this journey. What if they battle
yeah.
this monster? What if they're having this conversation? So it's literally just coming up with these tiny little nuanced details now. And that's just like free flowing.
Yeah, yeah. When
Mm.
you are creating different plot beats and scenes that you want to draw, are you drawing a lot from your actual kids as well and kind of the experiences that you've had as a dad and
Yeah,
bring that back
100%,
in?
man. Definitely. So all like the core details, like my relationship with the kids, how they interact with each other, how they interact with their mom, and just the life lessons I want to teach them, they're the core of the story. And I've literally just wrapped around the fantasy elements around these core elements.
Yeah,
So
awesome.
yeah, so each character, each of the kids, is literally my kids, and I've just dressed them up in these cool clothes. And yeah, and it's literally there's a father figure, there's going to be a mother figure,
Mm,
and it's just them navigating life pretty much.
yeah,
And the
sweet.
monsters they're battling is just the demons that we battle in everyday life. Um,
Mm,
and yeah, just turn into just pretend monsters pretty much. Yeah.
mm. Do they get to see it kind of unfold too, or are you like, no, 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 you're gonna see it when it's all done and you're gonna read it
No,
together?
no, they see me working on it every day. They're like, "Oh, Dad, is that me? Is that me?" It's like, "Yeah, that one's
Ah,
you."
that's
And then
cute.
it's like, it's like, "Yeah, that's you guys talking together, eating food, battling a monster." And they're like, "Oh, okay, cool." So they kind of get the idea of it. So yeah, it's cool. It's cool to show them, look, if you have an idea, you can actually bring it to fruition. So yeah, it's just good to show them that, yeah, just put your mind to it and you can accomplish your goals.
Yeah, there's no kind of like magic sauce. It's just hard work and just
Yeah,
sustainability and dedication. That's
that's
literally
it,
it.
man. That's it, man. That's it.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm.
With your kids, like, do you, now that they're kind of being exposed to art, and obviously, when they go into your studio and see all the cool things that you're working on,
Hmm.
are you starting to sense an interest in art? And do you think any of them will go on to become artists as well?
Definitely. My eldest, my daughter, she's definitely the most involved. She's always drawing, and she's always wanting to draw on the tablet as well, draw on the iPad. She's always asking me to teach her how to draw some basic stuff. So she's definitely got the eye for it.
Mm,
My oldest son, I feel like he actually has the gift for it. Like he's drawing, he can copy things quite easily, but he doesn't seem too interested in it, which is a bit of a
mm.
shame. But we'll see. We see where he goes. But my youngest, he's too young to actually do anything. He's only two, so he's just like drawing scribbles and all that. But yeah, I think at the moment my daughter is more interested, but hopefully my son will be too. So I can create
Yeah,
my
yeah, for
own
sure.
in-house studio and get them to draw my stuff.
Yeah. You guys are doing your own sequels with your characters.
Yeah.
That's it. Spin-offs
Typical
only.
Asian dad, right? Yeah,
Oh, that's funny.
yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool. So, with that as well, with when it comes to art too, like thinking about the art landscape of different careers, and especially being in Australia, where our gaming industry and film industry is a lot smaller than sort of compared to the rest of the world, I find that there's obviously a lot of different avenues of art. The way that you want to go, either your route, which is doing freelance, or if you want it to be more traditional, there's different avenues of that too. I guess, what are you just sort of your general thoughts about the accessibility of art nowadays for younger generations?
Nowadays, I think it's very accessible, especially with the internet. Like, I'm not sure, I'm pretty sure you've noticed it too, but at the conventions, there's so many young kids like tabling nowadays.
Yeah, yeah.
Because I know when I first started, like, how long has it been? Like 12 years ago now. There wasn't as many young people doing the tables. It was a lot older, the crowd.
Mm,
So it's I think with the internet and social media, all these younger kids are getting inspired to do a lot of conventions, and then they then branch off to do like YouTube or whatever. So yeah, I think it's very accessible, especially now that we can connect with anybody. We can learn from anybody, we can teach anybody, we can go to international shows. So I think there's no excuses now for
yeah,
people who
yeah.
are aspiring to be artists to go out and do it. Because I know, I think you're a little bit younger than me. How old are you now?
28.
Yeah, so when I was younger, I think it was at the tail end of this generation, that generation where like it was a lot harder to become an artist. You had to get into galleries, but with the advent of the internet, no excuses now.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
The internet really is, yeah, just getting eyes on things really mainly, and just kind of showing up and being consistent and connecting to different communities. That's
Hmm.
kind of how I got started, very, very slowly through Facebook groups. And I don't use Facebook anymore, but that kind
Mm.
of led into even just the idea of posting online and kind of putting yourself out there. Cause I remember at the start, just, I'm sure like, most of us are, but feeling very nervous and very protective of this thing that only I've been doing, kind of solitary for a while. And as you branch out, you start to meet like-minded people that are all kind of doing the same thing, which is really cool.
Hmm. For sure, man, for sure. Definitely.
Yeah. So you've I had a look as well. You had a YouTube channel where you posted a couple of different tutorials and things
Yeah,
like
yeah.
that too. I think there was a Venom and Spider-Man one, which is actually pretty
Oh,
cool to watch.
uh,
We were talking like 10, 15 years ago now,
yeah,
like old content. But
yeah,
in
yeah.
terms of growing your social media following and that sort of thing too, do you really recommend artists to start with a particular platform, or do you kind of say try everything and see what sticks?
To be honest, Instagram has always been my crown jewel. But at first I did start off with a bit of everything. But then once I realized that Instagram was growing rapidly, I just stuck to that one, and the rest kind of just was like pushed aside. So I can't really. I know a lot of artists have done really well on different platforms, but for me personally, Instagram has helped me a lot in terms of getting recognition around the internet. Um, so yeah, that's all I can really say. But I've seen a lot of artists get successful on different platforms. So yeah, so just try a bit of everything and see what works for you.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, definitely paying attention to the one that works for sure. I
Mm,
think that's a yeah. But yeah, you do kind of have to try if you don't have the information of sort of, being able to reflect on, the process of do you like creating videos? Do you like creating reels? Do you like just kind of painting and sharing a lot of that as well? You just kind of have to try a bunch of it. And then yeah, as you mentioned, seeing what avenues work for you and then eventually turning that into either like a following or trying to monetize it, make it your career as well, which is very exciting.
definitely. I would love to go into YouTube one day, but I know it takes a lot of hard work to get that up and running.
Mm.
So for now, we'll just stick to Instagram, and I'll pump out this storybook, and we'll see where everything leads.
Yeah. Do you have like a set schedule for, how many posts or like a content calendar that you follow for Instagram?
Nah, man, I'm pretty YOLO with this sort of stuff. I just draw. I just
Yeah, yeah.
before I would just try and pump out as much stuff as possible and just share it as often as I can. But then I realized I was just following trends, and my art quality wasn't very good. And with this recent algorithm change on Instagram, not reaching as many people, at first I thought that was bad. But then I realized in hindsight, it's actually pretty good because that's made me realize, look, let's focus more on quality rather than quantity, and just let's make each drawing tell a really good story. Make sure it's high quality. Make sure it's the best thing you've ever done. So yeah, I'm slowing back on releasing artwork and making sure that each piece is the best thing I can produce. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
yeah.
I
So
also think too, from just like a motivational point of view, right? Like
mhm.
I think about it in a similar way to maintaining a diet. So in the sense that, if you're so obsessed with calorie counting and making sure that you hit your macros and all that kind of stuff, it can get very draining just mentally, constantly having to think about that sort of thing rather than kind of the motivation underneath it. So especially with the social media grind too, I've definitely been in situations where I feel like, okay, I need to post X amount of times a week, and it's like a kind of arbitrary number that you're picking, and then because of that, if I don't hit that target, then I start feeling, shitty about myself, and I'm like, ah, damn it, I've already dropped the ball or whatever, and it kind of spirals a little bit, or at least that's how
Mm,
I view it.
mm,
But yeah, definitely taking the time. The main thing, I guess, is consistency, whatever consistency looks like for you, because you don't want to, on the flip side, go on crazy posting sprees and then just disappear for like 6 7 months.
mhm.
There's kind of a middle through line that you're able
That's right.
to keep up, and I
Yeah,
think
that's
that
right.
that's only really determined by you, like whatever your
Mhm.
schedule looks like.
hmm
So
That's right,
yeah,
100%. Yeah. So yeah, it's all about the balance, really.
yeah,
Um, but
yeah. You'd mentioned too, a couple of times when we chatted in conventions that you used to work at the Apple Store, I believe. For
oh yeah.
Yeah, so when you were doing that too, were you kind of balancing art on the side, and what did your day to day schedule look
Oh,
like?
oh, bro. So I was working at Apple since 2010, and I worked there all the way through to 2022. So that's 12 years. Um, and during that time, fuck, there's no nice way to put it. Like, it's a good job. It's a
Yeah,
great job. It's a great retail job. But for me as an artist, I fucking hated it so much. I was just there dealing with like just this. Some of the customers were just the most horrible. Like, it's like there's worse things in life than like a broken iPhone. Like, fucking hell,
yeah,
like
yeah, yeah,
just
yeah,
having to deal with them on a daily basis, and
yeah,
just wanting to work on my art. Just that mental drain was just so much. But again, looking in hindsight, I'm glad that I went through that, because that lit a fire under me, wanting to like, look, I need to make this work. I need to make this art thing work. So every lunch during my lunch break at work, for an hour, I'll just be drawing brush pen drawings every fucking day, just like drawing every day. Just I want to get out of this, and then I'll drive an hour home, and then I'll do it again at night time, go back to work the next day, 5 a.m., have to drive an hour there, and then wait for my lunch break, draw an hour, rinse and repeat. And then I'd apply for annual leave, to go to the conventions. So I'd do that maybe 10 to 15 times a year, and just, yeah. So I did that for 12 years. My kids were born during that time. So that was a very intense 12 years for me. But yeah, that in the end it turned out all right. It built
yeah,
calluses in
yeah,
my mind, and then
yeah,
it hardened me up for all the bad things that have happened, but I managed to get through it. So yeah,
Mm.
it was a good experience.
Yeah, yeah, and it's definitely good to reflect and take positives out of that experience as well, as you
Hmm.
mentioned, kind of lighting the fire and you realizing, what you want by knowing what you don't want, as I
Yeah.
always kind of mention. Um, yeah, one of your recent posts as well on IG, and you kind of going into, well, first of all, your posts when you do talk about mindset and mentality stuff, I
Mm.
love that shit. Like that's really good to kind of get a peek and be reminded of certain things that I either feel myself as well.
Hmm.
But you'd mentioned that when your kids were born, it was another kind of just like lock in, this has to
Yeah.
work. And can you
Yeah.
talk a little bit
Yeah.
about that experience as well?
Yeah, for sure, man. So when you become a dad, I know any dad that's listening would 100% understand what I'm saying. Just as soon as that kid's born, that kid's relying on you, and you you can't rely on anyone else to look after this kid. And that's when you just got to pretty much man up and just become stoic and just make things work. And I knew for me, I needed art to be happy, and I'm really stubborn, and I hate being told no. So I was going to be like, look, it's going to be art. I'm going to make art be the primary source of income to look after these kids. And these kids are relying on me. So let's just go out and do it. And we made that happen. So yeah,
Yeah,
it's just really
awesome.
hard to
Yeah.
explain, man. Because, like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, I remember we spoke about Alex Pereira and him
Yeah,
being a
yeah. A
dad
shout
and
this
him
is
just
gonna be
being.
the UFC portion, by the way, of the
Yeah, yeah,
podcast.
man. I had to bring in UFC somehow, right?
Of course, of course. Yeah, let's
Yeah,
talk about it.
so yeah, just seeing what he's gone through and him being a father and him just being so stoic and so macho and just going from nothing and to becoming like the UFC superstar and looking after his two boys and yeah, man, that's yeah, I just want to embody that with my art career. Just yeah, just
Yeah.
that in a nutshell.
Yeah, yeah, of
Yeah,
course.
yeah,
When your
yeah.
kid was born too, like, your bench doubles, you get this dad strength, and it's just, like, immediately. But,
Yeah, dude.
yeah, I think
Yeah, yeah.
for me, I really look up to Alex Volkanovski, just kind of
Yeah,
the
yeah.
way that he conducts and carries himself, and, I don't remember exactly what fight it was after in the post-fight press conference, but he was saying something along the lines of just, like, "Just stand up for yourself," right? And he
Mm.
kept repeating that again and again,
I think that was the
and,
Ortega fight, was it?
I think so, yeah. It
Yeah,
must
yeah,
have
yeah.
been the Ortega one where he almost lost the belt.
Yeah,
That
yeah,
was an
yeah. Oh,
insane fight.
that's when I became a super fan of his, man. It's like holy
Yeah, yeah, me
shit.
too. I
Yeah.
think all of us did. We were like, after the Max
Yeah.
trilogy and then Ortega, we were like, "Oh, wait a minute. Hang on a second."
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, this guy's a
Um,
monster.
yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting too, like stoic in the sense of what I believe stoicism is the kind of acceptance. It comes down to acceptance of just accepting your place and sort of not holding on to anything emotionally, letting things go, and kind of just trying to be the best person that you can. And I find like again, just another rant, but like a section of the internet has taken stoicism and kind of twisted it and turned it to something that it's not really. And
Mm,
it's just people kind of chasing the dream, chasing the grind, but it's still for external reasons.
mm,
Um, Whereas in the case of what I believe Stoicism to be, it's very much of that self reflection, wanting to better people around you and kind of live a life of virtue. And that's what I believe too.
yeah,
So
for sure, man.
yeah, it's a thing too of like just genuinely not making excuses for your lot in life as well. And again, obviously everyone's situation is different. The way that I apply it to my life as well, it's like with now me taking YouTube very, very seriously and kind of going full in on it. The thing that I've found works for me the most as an artist. But sort of the excuses now of like, oh, I don't really want to edit this thing. It's like now it's like, nah, that's not even in my brain anymore. It's like just
Yeah,
do it, just do the thing, get it out
that's
there,
it.
get it done,
That's it.
move on to the next thing.
That's it.
And if you're really kind of serious about wanting it to be like a full-time career and all that, there's sacrifices you're going to have to make as well, and that's just kind of is what it is. But the way that I view it is like high risk, high reward sort of thing of like this. I
Hmm.
can't picture doing anything else. Like this is what I want to spend with my time, until I die, basically. So
Nice.
yeah, and it's good to kind of get to that mental clarity, I believe. So
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think everyone just needs to find the opportunity to find that one thing that helps
yeah,
them put themselves into that mindset.
yep,
And then I think the world will be a much better place if everyone can find that thing and just apply
yeah.
themselves. Yeah.
I think so. I think so. And I don't remember if I've talked about this on the channel before, but I just remember along the lines of like on the way to getting to that thing, like you have to try stuff out and you have to fail as well, and kind of realize that certain things aren't for you. And there's I might have brought this up on the channel, but have you heard of the show Better Call Saul before?
I've heard of it.
Like Breaking
I've
Bad
watched
and Better
Breaking
Call
Bad,
Saul.
yeah, but I haven't
Yeah,
watched
yeah.
Better Call Saul.
So there was, I remember I was listening to like they have a podcast on Spotify,
Hmm.
which the writers room, and they talk about the different episodes that have aired. They do it for like literally every single episode and talk about
Hmm.
the challenges that they faced writing the episode or getting to a certain plot point or whatever.
Hmm.
Like highly recommend it if you like Better Call Saul.
Is this Vince
But
Gilligan?
yeah, Vince
Yeah,
Gilligan.
yeah, nice.
I can't remember the other guy's name, but
Hmm.
he's also like one of the head writers of specifically Better Call Saul. He came
Hmm.
up with the character in Breaking Bad.
Nice. Hmm.
But in one of the podcasts, they were talking about the concept of I think it was actually Bob Odenkirk, like Saul himself,
Hmm.
and he was talking about when he went into film school, like the first lecture there or whatever. The tutor kind of said to everybody, you know, by the end of semester, only like 20% of you are going to go on to actually, you know, become writers. Because I think he started doing writing first,
Hmm.
and that kind of statistic made everyone go like, oh crap, okay, so like a lot of us are going to fail. But what Bob was saying in the podcast was after that, like the 80% of people that don't go on to become writers, like they don't go into the void. They don't just like cease to exist. Some of them go on to be very good producers. Some of them go on to be very good actors. Some of them go on
Hmm.
to do set design. It's not like you don't all have to become writers, right? And
Yep.
so that kind of illustrates the point of the journey, kind of self-reflection, thinking about what works for you,
Hmm.
and kind of like getting to the stage of, oh, I actually really don't like this thing,
Hmm.
or I really, really want to double down, and this is the thing that I'm going to lose sleep over, and getting to that point, right? Um, and yeah, I just found like it was a very useful reminder to kind of hear. We all go through it, so yeah,
Definitely. That reminds me of I'm not sure if you heard the Steve Jobs speech where he talks about connecting the dots.
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah,
yeah,
yep,
you've heard of it? Yeah,
yep.
so it's very reminiscent of that. Um, so I think that also allows you to stay very positive about your life and
Mm.
just make sure whatever happens, it's always a learning experience for you to get to your final destination.
Yeah, yeah, for
Mm,
sure. Um, Mark Manson, who wrote the Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck,
mm,
he talks about this too on his YouTube channel, and he says that accepting a negative experience in life as positive is in itself positive.
hmm.
Which yeah, I find like, you know, any kind of hardship or anything, I think about what are the things I can learn from it. You know, obviously like feel your feelings and, you know, recognize that it sucks or is shitty or whatever, but don't kind of hold on to it, or worse still, like let it stop you from achieving what you want in life.
Yeah,
There's always kind of a lesson to be learned in that. So
yeah, 100%, man, 100%.
yeah,
Yeah, fuck
yeah, that
that.
kind
This
of
went
leads.
deep, bro.
Oh yes, with my interview with Orenji as well. Like yeah, I was chatting to him about his ducks and all that kind of stuff. And at a certain point, I was getting like really like in the minutia of art, creativity, and like what does it
Yeah,
mean to be an artist. And he was like, "Bro, I don't think about this that deep."
yeah. Yeah,
But yeah,
I can see
it's
him just being more chill, but
yeah,
yeah,
no,
but
for
I think
sure,
that's
yeah.
why I resonate with you a lot because we have that similar wavelength where we like to talk about this very philosophical kind of
Mm.
stuff. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. It kind of and just for me personally, but it bleeds into so many other aspects of my life, and
Mm,
even just in the sense of learning new skills and stuff. Like you and I both do martial arts, and even just understanding a movement or like a pattern or whatever, and kind of applying it. And it's weird, kind of seeing connections to that of like, oh, like the way that I learn how to do things in martial arts, I can apply to art as well. Just
hmm.
these different concepts, even though it's not the same thing, obviously. Um,
Yeah.
but there's kind of a through line there, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
When it comes to challenges as well, something I did want to ask you is throughout your career doing freelance and everything, you know, did you have a particular kind of freelance job that was particularly challenging, or any period in your life that was pretty hard to, you
Oh,
know?
yeah. So as I mentioned before, I did TAFE, and as soon as I finished that course, I dabbled in freelancing, and I was still very young, very new to the whole game, so I didn't know what I was doing. So I just took on any job, and there was this one job where I didn't lay out, look, this is how much I want to get, this is how much I want to be paid, and these are my terms and conditions. I was too stupid. I didn't know what to do, so I didn't say that up front. So that client then took advantage of that and worked me
Uh,
to death, man. And for one character illustration, I got paid pretty much peanuts. I poured so many hours into that drawing, and that that traumatized me so much. I was
Oh
like,
yeah, I
okay,
bet.
yeah, that, yeah. Even though it was very early on in my career, I still remember that, and I believe that was probably one of my toughest client experiences. But it taught me a lot, and ever since then, all the freelance jobs I've received, I made sure to lay out all the terms straight up, be upfront, and yeah, everything's been good since then. So yeah,
That's good. Yeah.
yeah.
Is that like when you were in TAFE doing, concept art and
Mm.
all that sort of thing, did they talk about freelance? Did they talk about sort of managing your career post, TAFE, or was it just kind of here are the skill sets that you need to learn for this job?
So no, it was pretty much a very YOLO course because it was the first year that they conducted it, and I just literally just saw it pop up somehow, and I was like, oh, that looks cool, and I applied for it, not knowing what it would entail, and then yeah, so they literally didn't teach us much at all. We just but I did get to hang around some other artists. So it was a very studio-like environment. So it was a good experience. But in terms of setting us up for career, it didn't do much for me really.
Mm,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
And most of that you think was just your own self-learning afterwards and getting resources and things
Yeah.
like that?
Well, everything that I've accomplished have been through self-teaching, self-learning. Yeah.
Mm.
Hmm.
Yeah. I think too, adopting that mindset of just you're kind of responsible for your own learning and career
Hmm.
outside of it too. Because I remember once I graduated from uni, and I loved my uni, like I had a lot of
Hmm.
fun with it. But when I
Yeah.
graduated, I did feel some type of way afterwards of just the skill sets of like not feeling enough, whether
Hmm.
that was my own personal thing, but or whatever. But at a certain point, you just have to realize, like, oh, again, I'm recognizing there's holes in my knowledge of certain things, and then it's kind of up to you to go and plug those things and figure it out. Because obviously, say there's 20 people doing a uni course, again, not all of those people are going to go on to become writers. Some of them will be producers, some of them will be actors, and you kind of have to supplement and find your own thing in order
Hmm.
to kind of get to where you need to be, right? Which I think is
Hmm.
a very important lesson to learn.
Yeah. Definitely. Definitely. 100%.
Mm. When you were starting to do conventions as well, was this all kind of at the same time as, were you at Apple and doing freelance on the side and, all at
Yeah,
the
yeah, it
same
was
time?
all literally everything was just happening at the same time. So I couldn't fully 100% focus purely on art. So yeah, so like I mentioned before, I as soon as I finished TAFE though, I went straight into the convention scene. So Sydney Supernova was my first one.
Yep.
But yeah, I was working at the same time at Apple, and yeah, it was all happening all at once in the beginning. But
Mm.
once it hit 2022, that's when I just fully focused on art
Mm.
100%.
Mm. Mhm.
Hmm.
I kind of feel like that at the moment as well, just with YouTube and conventions, and then doing freelance stuff here and there as well. Very recently, though, I've decided to make YouTube kind of like the thing. This is the thing I'm going to focus on for the next year and kind of give it my all. But something I always like to talk to artists about is just what's your schedule like? How do you balance all of these things? Because obviously, all of us have 24 hours in a day, and how do you kind of spend that time? And especially, when you were balancing all of those things to now, and how does that look like?
Yep. So my schedule is pretty much during the school term when my kids are at school. I take them to school, drop them off, come home, and then I just relax with my wife a bit, have a coffee, and then I get stuck into work. I work until lunchtime, and then eat with my wife and my youngest, work a bit more, get the kids, bring them home, work a bit more, and then we have dinner together. I hang out with my kids a bit, put them to bed, work a bit more, and then go to bed. So my day is pretty much broken up into three segments of working. Um, but when it is crunch time, so if I'm having to pump out some client work, or if I'm getting ready for a convention or doing some online sales, I literally have to pass on all that responsibility to my wife, get her to do everything while I just pump all my art related work out. So That's only maybe once every couple months. It's like that, but generally my day's broken up into those three segments, just so I can balance my life out with my kids as well.
Yeah. Do you find having that broken kind of stop start approach is kind of reinvigorating for when you do go back for the next painting session?
At first I found it kind of disrupting because before kids I would just spend the whole day just drawing.
Yeah.
But I realized having breaking up the day is actually more beneficial. That way I can actually do a little bit of a workout whenever I can to stretch my legs, have a little break, and then I can come back with fresh eyes. And then with the fresh eyes, I can see all the mistakes that I've done and fix those up. And yeah, I find it more economic doing it that way now.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
For sure. And then, yeah, what was it like in the beginning with Apple and conventions as well, kind of having the other day job?
Yeah, it sucked. But I didn't have much sleep, dude. So
Right.
as soon as I come back from work, I'd work on the art prints. I'll try and level up, and then go back to work, try and level up during my lunch break, and rinse and repeat. And there was a period of time where I would literally wake up. It was a 6 month period where I was like, look, my anatomy sucks. I want to get really good at my anatomy. So I woke up at 4 a.m. every day, and then I studied anatomy for like 2 hours before work, and then went to work. So I got the extra 2 hours each day to level up, and I was just trying to manage my time more efficiently that way. Um, so yeah, that period, I was just literally killing myself trying to work, trying to balance both things. So it was just even more sweet. That just made it sweeter once I finally resigned. I was like, yes, I can just devote myself completely
Directly
to
to it.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, right. Firing on all cylinders kind of thing
That's
too.
right. That's
Yeah.
right.
That's cool. How long did that period last for? Of you mentioned you worked at Apple for 12 years, but that
Mm,
4 a.m. wake up, grind and all that. How
yeah.
long did that?
So that was towards the tail end of working at Apple. So that was around like 6 months. I was doing that, and then yeah, and then after that, that's when I could finally resign, and I could kind of balance my schedule.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is my own kind of belief with it too. It's a hot take, but this is just what I feel. When it comes to grinding and all that kind of stuff, you kind of as an artist, you kind of have to go like a little bit beyond that point to determine what that's for you. Just
Hmm.
because I feel like if you haven't gotten to that stage yet, it's just you don't know what you're capable of. And
Yeah.
so I think for me I've had periods of extreme burnout. I'm not like condoning burnout or anything, but I'm just saying that doing what you have to get to where you want to go, and whatever that looks like, and then just being able to pull yourself in. And we all go through periods as well. I don't think everything is as super idealized or as easy as it may seem to be on the outset. Um, but yeah, I'm not saying go full like Whiplash or whatever. That's terrible, terrible idea. But I definitely think yeah, when it's time to crunch, crunch, and yeah. But it's yeah. That's just yeah what I feel.
Yeah,
So
sure, man. But there was a period where I did go full whiplash, and then it was very detrimental to my wife
yeah,
and my kids. I was like, shit,
yeah,
this isn't good. So I had to really like, I I was so locked in. It took a long time to kind of like step back a bit. So now I've got a much healthier work-life balance because before um uh we were we had a bit of financial struggles, and I was like, shit, I need to grind, and then that's when I went full whiplash mode, and then yeah, but now that we're much more comfortable now, so I've managed to kind of step back and yeah, take it a bit easier, so my wife
yeah.
and kids are a bit happier now.
Yeah, yeah, that's
Yeah.
good. That's good for sure.
Hmm.
Um, I guess with when it comes to like students and people that are learning art, because I know a lot of people that are getting into it watch my channel. Do you have any advice about that period specifically when you graduate and now it's kind of up to you? It's you'll make your career of what you will. Any kind of general advice for people like that?
Hmm. Well, let's say you're young and you know you really want to do art as a career. Just all you got to do is just really grind the fundamentals, really. Get really good at like perspective, lighting, all those kind of boring stuff, and then kind of balance that out with your own creative ambitions as well. So you've got to have your understanding of the basics as well as your creative freedom. And once you feel comfortable enough, then maybe dabble into conventions, just to see what it's like, and then you can start building up your profile from there. And yeah, and then you can get to the stage where conventions and online sales and all that can kind of support you. Well, that's my personal journey, but I know other people go down like the more production route where they become concept artists or whatever. But yeah, like we mentioned earlier, with the internet, the world is your oyster. So yeah, you just gotta build that mentality, have that discipline to just be consistent every day, do something to improve yourself. And when you do feel down, which all of us have in the early days, you just gotta kind of slap yourself out of it and just continue the long grind. And over the course of 10 years, as long as you've stayed consistent, you will have accomplished a lot and you'll know what you want.
Yeah,
Because,
yeah, for
yeah.
sure.
Hmm.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, just getting that information and understanding what is it about the artistic process that really gravitates, that you gravitate towards rather. Um, yeah, and then yeah, trying a bunch of different things out, seeing what sticks, seeing what doesn't, and yeah, kind of carving your own identity in space and all the rest of it
Yeah,
too.
yeah, for sure, man. But yeah, that's something that a lot of younger artists are always so like they're always so caught up in. It's just like, oh, I want my style, my own personal style, before they can even draw a cube in perspective properly, right?
Yeah,
So like yeah, you just got to really nail those fundamentals because that's a mistake that I made, and I
yeah,
wish I had been told that much earlier, because that would
yeah.
have saved me so much time.
I also think too on the topic of style. This is definitely something I've spoken about on the channel a bunch, but it's very subconscious, right? The way that I view style is like the fundamentals is again getting the building blocks of how to form a sentence, but then your style is what you choose to say, and what
Hmm.
you choose to say, you're not very conscious of it. Like I don't really think about my voice sounding the way it does or my fingerprints looking the way it just kind of happens.
Hmm.
Um, I think, but you know, on the flip side too, it is your style is like a giant, you're the blender. All the influences go
Hmm.
into you and then your style is what comes out of it.
That's
For
right.
me specifically, you know, I really enjoy like lo-fi stuff. I really like the relaxing cozy environments, but then I also really like cyberpunk things, and I'm trying to fuse
Hmm.
those things together and create a different place for that. But then I also really like the graphic reduction style of Into the Spider-Verse, and it
Hmm.
all just sort of blends and forms in. But your style constantly changes and evolves just as you do as well.
Hmm.
Like before, you know, I used to be very into fantasy, D&D, more gritty, realistic, very God of War esque types of illustrations, and then that just naturally changed over time. So, yeah, I think the consistent aspect of working on the fundamentals, that should definitely be just in your routine anyway.
Hmm.
Just as a top tier athlete will work out and you know keep those muscles strong and fresh or whatever, and then it's time to perform, right? Whatever that looks like.
Yeah,
So
100%, man.
yeah. Yeah, again, very like esoteric. I tend to go on very different topics, but the way that I understand it is just if I can relate it to other things and see if there's any kind of through line or whatever, it's just easier
Yeah, for sure,
to
man.
yeah,
Yeah,
to sink
like
in.
like these organic conversations, I feel like are much more helpful to for the audience watching because like if it's too structured, it gets a little bit boring, you know, for me personally.
Yeah, yeah, for
So just
sure.
seeing like these random conversations happen, it's just more entertaining and more, yeah.
Yeah, I agree. And I think each person that I talk to as well, like has their own unique sort of perspective and all that. And I just want to see where that goes.
Mm.
So yeah, you know, usually I give you like the questions beforehand of the things that the conversation may go into. But as you're telling me stories about your life and the things that you've experienced, I'm like, oh, that's a thing that I want
Hmm.
to pull apart more and just see where that goes. And I feel like that's where the true like meat of the conversation lies most of
Hmm.
the time as well. Um, yeah. So
Yeah, for sure, man. Yeah. So
yeah,
yeah, so let me ask you something. You ready for this year, for another busy year of conventions, or
yeah, I am. I
yeah?
am. It's
Yeah.
I don't think I've got anything until like April or May, and that was by intention because
Hmm.
I chose to leave like the first 4 or 5 months of this year kind of free. I think I'm probably doing fewer conventions as well. I do want to hit obviously all the big cities, Sydney. Melbourne, Brisbane, and all that kind of thing.
Hmm.
Um, but most of this year is going to be focusing more on the YouTube aspect of it as well,
Nice.
but also trying to find a way of making all of it flow together
Hmm.
in the sense of I'm doing a illustration that can be a YouTube video that can later be a print. Like all of
Nice.
the way that I spend my
Yep.
time is much more structured and less kind
Hmm.
of sporadic.
Nice.
That
Nice.
was the thing of last year that it was very, very difficult to
Hmm.
handle. Where the YouTube video would be something completely different, and then then I'm like, oh yeah, I have a like a print to do for a convention, and then I have to like restart something, and it's just very very difficult.
Yeah, for sure, man.
Um,
Yeah, because I have spoken to a lot of artists, and a lot of people have said they want to cut back on a lot of conventions and just mainly
yeah,
really revitalize their art this year.
mm,
So yeah, it's interesting how we're all on the same. Yeah,
wavelength.
yeah, that's right, that's right.
Yeah, sometimes it's weird too how parallel thinking just sort of occurs. I
Mm,
think it's just kind of happens. But yeah, and the good thing too with conventions, it's like they'll always be there for you, right? There's always going to be conventions each year. So 1 year of doing fewer conventions isn't like the end of the world kind of thing. Like there will be more in the future. And then you kind of just have to weigh up what's important to you, whether that's going full steam ahead on all the conventions and hit as many as you can this year, or kind of pull back a little bit and focus more on the fundamental aspect. Because again, as I mentioned earlier, like we all have 24 hours in a day, and
hmm.
how you choose to spend it determines, how the rest of your schedule looks like, obviously.
Yeah, yeah,
So
definitely,
yeah,
man, definitely.
yeah. So speaking about schedules and things of that nature too, like, is there what do you kind of expect for yourself over the next 5 years of things that you want to accomplish, or even just what you want your life to look like?
Hmm. Oh, I haven't really thought about that, to be honest. Okay,
Okay. Is
I
that
took a
something you were
quick look.
thinking about when you were a student? Is sort of where you were in the future,
Nah,
or did
because
it kind of?
I'm a very YOLO kind of person, so I don't really like to structure my future too much.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
I know all I knew is that look, I want to do art full time. I want to look after my family, and whatever happens after that, we're good. Um, but I've mainly run by short term goals, really. So right now I obviously want to do the book, the book project, and there are a couple of illustrations that I want to do for this year. But in terms of maybe 5 years, I reckon I've accomplished everything I wanted to really accomplish in terms of long term. Like just being able to support my family with my art, that was my ultimate dream. And now that I've done that, I'm just mainly focusing on just small projects now. So yeah, so I try not to look too far ahead because I know from experience things can just change rapidly, and that just changes everything. Hmm.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely awesome that you've kind of gotten to that stage and reflected, and you are sort of where you are now. And
Hmm.
again, it's just through all that hard work and dedication that's gotten you there. Um,
Hmm.
yeah, I think I'm the same too. When it comes to just, I know exactly like what I want to be doing this year, but when it comes
Hmm.
to 2026 and beyond, I have a rough skeletal structure. But whether or not that actually happens is just out of my control, right?
Yeah,
It's so far ahead, I can't even think about it. But I think too that a lot of the day to day, the things that you're doing and the projects that you're getting into builds momentum, and then that
hmm,
momentum kind of shifts in a different direction, or yeah, you can definitely end up places you might not have expected. But
that's right.
all of it's very
That's
organic as well.
yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's exactly why I don't try to look too far ahead. Yeah.
Mm. In terms of for the production side of things as well, is there like a film that you would have really loved to work on, or a video game
Uh,
that you would have loved to be a part of, or anything that comes to mind?
early on in my art career, yes, there were a lot of films and games I would have loved to have worked on, but I feel like I like to create my own stories. I like to do my own projects. So that's where my passion and my heart truly lies. But if I can kind of go back to what I was thinking early on, I would have loved to have worked on all the older Pixar films, done some like cool concept art for the Pixar films, and yeah, and do some cool concept art for maybe some games as well. But yeah, like I said, I prefer to do my own projects now because that's where I can just let my imagination just run wild and just do whatever it
Yeah,
wants. And yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I think I'm
Hmm.
definitely the same way too, where it's like when I graduated and all I wanted was like the industry experience in being a concept artist and working on
Mm,
games and all that kind of thing. And as I started to get those jobs, I was like, oh, this is fun, but it's, as you mentioned, it's not where my heart lies.
mm,
And then kind of realizing and getting to that stage of acceptance as well of like, okay, this is what I want, and kind of
hmm.
admitting that to yourself. um, but again, that's that place of where I ended up now. Would never have thought I would be this way when I was in high school or whatever. Oh, this is where my life would look. So
Yeah, it's crazy,
yeah, man.
right?
Yeah, yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I think so too. But yeah, that sounds awesome. Like all of the different projects, and I think working on a book as well. Like, so do you? We've talked about this before, but do you write all of the plot structure of everything, and then you develop the illustrations afterwards, or what does that process look like?
Yeah. Okay. So what? So I just try and so like I mentioned earlier, it's like the overall story I want to tell my kids, like just the life values that I want to teach the kids. And then I just literally have that down. And it's like, how can I wrap a story around these values? And so I'm like, okay, so there's the nature of good and evil and all of that, and how can I kind of incorporate like a fantasy element in with here, and like it's like a whole network, a whole web of ideas, and I kind of like try and web it all together into one cohesive structure. And yeah, that's why I mentioned earlier why it's so stressful having to get that nailed nicely and early on. That way, it makes it much easier for the rest of the project to carry forward.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I think too, simplicity is hard, right? I think when we're learning how to paint and draw, like we're all really wanting simplicity or get to that stage of where it doesn't even look like we're putting a ton of effort.
Mm,
And I think a mistake I definitely made and probably still make to this day is kind of over detailing things. And I really have to
hmm.
turn that part of my brain off, even not even just in like an illustration sense, but as you mentioned, in terms of concept as well. Getting to the simplicity of a concept of this is, the plot of the book is a very very simple just through line, but then how to actually show that and where
Mm.
to pull different things into. um yeah, do you have any sort of processes for getting to that stage about how to keep things simple rather than over detailing?
Oh, I think a good way to explain it is when I do any illustration, just a single illustration, I always just do very loose thumbnail drawings, just to get as many ideas out as possible, as quickly as possible. And then from there, after all that scramble is out, I pick one or two of them that look promising, and then I then develop those further. So in essence, I just like to get all the garbage out of my mind, and then from there you find the gems, and then you then develop those gems further. Um, and that also helps me stay really loose by having those really loose sketches in the beginning, and then have that translate across into the final illustration. So yeah, just get like whenever I'm traveling interstate, I'm always sketching in the sketchbook just to vomit out all these ideas, as many as possible. And then when I come back home, I look back, it's like, oh, that looks cool, and then I then bring that into a finished illustration later on. So
Yeah, I think so. The
mm,
initial thumbnail stage is so important because, as I mentioned earlier in the interview as well, like that's really where the energy is captured in like the
mhm,
first 20-30 seconds of whatever else. And if it's going to work, it's going to work. But that's what I learned from framed ink. Is like the abstraction of the way that a line might move on the page, or like
yeah,
how something might redirect your eye back
mhm,
into the composition itself. Like that only happens in the first couple of strokes, and then that's
that's
it.
right, that's
And
right.
anything apart from that is just, yeah, just the icing on the cake. There
Mhm,
was a saying, what was like, work big to solve small problems, work small to solve big problems in terms of like your actual canvas size. So
right.
yeah, which makes sense because, yeah, work small to solve big problems. Like your thumbnail will be this big, and but
Mhm,
like you're solving major structural changes about the actual image, and then all the
that's right.
detailing stuff is something that you're not necessarily gonna take on first viewing, perhaps subconsciously.
Mm.
But yeah, as long as the structure is there, doesn't really matter what you say, it's still gonna work. So
That's right. Because yeah, I like to see the details. Are kind of like eye candy. It's like a
yeah,
lot of
yeah,
yeah, it's yeah a lot of eye candy. Um,
yeah,
so yeah,
yeah. I think
yeah, go on.
Oh, I was gonna say, I think the details is like, funnily enough, where the style thing comes from. It's like
Hmm.
what each artist chooses to detail and how they choose to detail or use texture. It's like that's where you really get the impression of somebody's personality or just like artistic sense, you know?
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Yeah, yeah, exactly. Like I personally like to do a lot of brushstrokey kind of art,
Mm,
because I'm actually really lazy. I don't like doing the details, so yeah, I'm just trying to
right.
cut some corners and just yeah, just kind of imply all the details and everything. So
Yeah.
yeah, so that's yeah.
Yeah, I think so. And I think that's 100% something I've been trying to focus on more. Like the last piece I did, which was fan art for Sifu, the game, and it's just
Hmm.
this illustration of a like a fake concept that I made for it. But during the whole time, I was just trying to think, all right, just keep things simple, put all the details around where it matters, but then apart from that, like get to a certain point, but don't do it more than you need to, and that's
Mm,
very intentional as well. Because you could spend the time and do all of the different window details and all of the reflections and things like that, but it ultimately takes away from the overall part of it too. Which I think,
yeah.
again, switching to the student mentality, like because I was like a huge sweat in uni. I was like tried so hard at like every single thing, gave it like 110%, and some of that
Hmm.
can be detrimental. Where it's like
Mm,
in the artistic process, I mean. And yeah, it's really learning to get to that stage. But it's very liberating too. It's like, oh, I don't have to draw all these leaves. I can do like two strokes with a paintbrush, and then like your
yeah,
brain's gonna think it's a bush. Like it's very
yeah.
cool.
Yeah, for sure, man. Like I remember seeing all these all the old school painters, like the Renaissance painters and like the
Mm,
Impressionist painters. I went to see one of their shows, and you look from far away, it looks all detailed, and then close up, they're just these loose brush strokes. And I was like, holy shit, that's crazy. So yeah, it's
yeah,
something
yeah,
I
yeah,
want to like implement into my own work as well. So
yeah,
yeah,
yeah, for sure.
less is
Are
more.
there any? Yeah, are there any like exercises that you recommend with that specifically, or is it just
In terms of just staying very loose and with the brush strokes and stuff like that, or
yeah, specifically staying loose.
yeah, it's all traditional. I because with when I use brush pens and ink, I always try and just work with silhouettes. So I use the lighter gray inks to kind of like create loose shapes, and then I use the blacks to then maybe add kind of medium-sized shapes to those gray shapes. That adds more detail and more structure. But then I try and keep it at that. Just yeah, just to keep it nice and loose, and let your brain do most of the
Heavy
detailing.
lifting. Yeah.
That's right. That's right.
That's very cool. The way that what you've just described is, I kind of think about it like clay, even though it's 2D, but it starts off as a very blobby kind of organic shape, and then you choose again to decide what to detail in that, and it's all in that intention that, yeah, really brings the piece together, I think.
Hmm.
Yeah. I think one of my favorite pieces of yours, and this is not just because I'm a huge Alien fan, but it definitely is the Alien one because of the way that, the xenomorph itself is so complex in its silhouette. There's a lot of different tubes and the biomechanical aspects of it, but I'll put it up on screen so
Yeah,
people
yeah,
can
for
see it.
sure.
But yeah, just the way that you've captured the horde element of it as
Hmm.
well, and kind of things blending into each other. I think that's
Hmm.
definitely like one of the things that makes your art is that skill, which is yeah, very incredible to look at.
Oh, just thank you. Yeah. What inspired that piece actually was the when I was playing Last of Us 2, the Rat King zombie. Like, oh, that's cool. So I was
I
like, what
see, I
if I
see.
apply that to
To
the
Alien.
xenomorphs? And then I was like, okay, let's kind of like scramble them all together and just have one prominent one there. And then they seemed
Yeah.
to resonate really well with the general audience. So I'm like, okay, cool, nice, nice. So
Yeah,
yeah, I'm pretty
yeah.
happy with that piece too.
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
it's awesome.
yeah.
It really reminds me of because I used to read a lot of old Alien comics and stuff when I was a
Mm,
kid, just with the design and the way that you've specifically captured the teeth in the mouth, like really
mm,
harkens back to the older, like just so lethal and being really sharp and pointy,
yeah,
and
yeah,
the
nice.
general shapes that you've used as well, which
Yeah,
is really
awesome.
cool.
Yeah, I just like to
So
make my artworks very aggressive in general. Just
yeah, yeah,
that
yeah.
I got that from Kekai Kotaki because he's
Okay.
got very aggressive but beautiful characters.
Mm.
So that's where I got the inspiration from.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. With your art pieces too, because you have a bunch of ensemble ones, like the Dragon Ball Z one, I think. Is that the one in the big food cafeteria with all the
The Korean
plates?
barbecue.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
that
yeah,
one.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, when approaching like a gigantic illustration like that, like What was that process like, and how long
Yep.
did that take to finish?
Okay. For that one in particular, I initially just started off with the sayings in the closest table. I actually sketched that up in my sketchbook on the way to one of the conventions, and then I kind of like did a clean line art drawing at home, and then I kind of left it because I was like, "Oh, something's kind of missing. I'm not really vibing with it." And then when Toriyama passed away, I was like, okay, I think I can make this as a nice tribute piece to him. So then I kind of expanded the scene and added a couple more tables. And then I was like, oh shit, this is getting interesting. And then I added more characters, and I was like, how can these characters kind of interact? What's the history? And then yeah, so it was just a giant, just like, how do I explain it? Like I literally just laid out the environment and was like, let's just have these characters interact with each other, have some fun with it, and
Mm,
that's how it was born pretty much. And
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
and I spent around a couple of weeks on that one, and yeah, pretty happy with that, eh? So
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
that's cool. I've
yeah,
definitely
yeah,
seen like you have a giant print version of it too
yeah,
in
the
your
giant
Manji,
one,
which
yeah,
that's so cool. Do you
yeah.
like when it's printed, do you go back and add I think there was one of the videos or reels that you posted where you were doing like whiteout or just like adding a couple extra details on top of the print as well?
Uh, no, that should have been an original ink drawing. I never draw on top of the
Right,
prints.
right. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, at the beginning. Okay.
Mm-mm-mm.
Yeah. But that piece in particular too with all the sayings that do you know the artist Patrick Brown? He does a lot of like I think he's Australian
Oh,
as well. Does a lot of
is he
comics.
like the comic style artist, right?
Yeah,
He
yeah, yeah.
sounds familiar.
And
Yeah, yeah.
he'd done a couple like some of his most well-known ones are like the GTA characters together, but he did one with all video game characters
Hmm.
in Michael's house from GTA 5.
Okay. Hmm.
So it's like Kratos and John Marston
Oh
and
yeah,
like all these
sick.
different things. But
Yeah,
yeah, it's
nice.
that hyper like just so much detail in it. And
Mm,
then as you mentioned too with all the little fun character
yeah,
interactions, it's like if you know you know kind of thing, which I always
yeah,
appreciate as a fan. So
yeah, yeah, for sure, man.
yeah, that's very
Yeah,
cool.
yeah. But that's something I do want to explore more going forward, like those more super detailed pieces. Um, so there is one I've got already roughed out that I'm excited to start working on soon. So
Oh yeah,
more,
sure. Yeah.
yeah,
Are you allowed
more
to
on that
talk about
soon.
what it is, or do you want to keep it a
Uh,
surprise for now?
we'll keep it on the wraps for now. But
Okay.
hopefully I'll get started on it very soon, and maybe at the end
Sure.
of January, early February, I can release it.
Yeah. Awesome. Awesome. Cool.
Yeah.
You heard it here first, everyone. So come back and point to this. Yeah. I don't even know. I read this somewhere, but I can't remember where from. But it's the thing of like pushing the snowball up the hill, where it's you create enough momentum where when the thing actually happens, it can sustain itself, and you don't necessarily have to grind as hard or
Hmm.
push as much as you did beforehand. And that's definitely something you were telling me with when you were working at Apple as well, kind of
Mm,
balancing those two.
mm,
Because yeah, at the moment I'm still working at the optometrist. So
hmm.
for people that don't know on the channel, I have a day job at an optometrist, and then I also do art as well. And obviously wanting the art to be the thing that's full time. But I've definitely adopted a lot of the same mentality that you're saying, where it's like even and I have to put a caveat too. Like if it's not busy at work, if I have nothing else to do, then that's when I'll start doing like a little bit of art or a little bit of drawing or just planning stuff or content out there as well. But in the sense of I'm always thinking about it. It's always
Mm,
like not far from the back of my brain about the stuff that I want to explore, the stories that I want to tell. And I think because it's just rattling around there like all the time, it kind of feeds into a lot of my actions for it as well. So
yeah, for
yeah,
sure, man.
that's kind of how I think about it.
Yeah, I think that's how every artist should be living life, actually. Just always thinking about art, how to improve, what you want to do
Yeah.
next, and yeah, so you got to live and
At a
breathe it.
certain point, I was wondering, like, is this too obsessive? Because it's not far enough. Well, even the funny thing is, like, if I go for walks with my friends and I'm just, enjoying the walk and enjoying the conversation, I'm sure you already know where I'm leading with this.
Yeah.
But like, all I'm looking at is like, okay, this is how the light is hitting this thing. This is how the the shadow. Oh, that's an interesting texture. And I have a little notebook and I'll write stuff down as well. Like, if I can't obviously paint it or obviously take a picture, but I'll be like, okay, just pay attention to the shadow looking way more purple here for some reason, and then
Yeah,
try and
yeah,
like
yeah.
explore that later. But
Bro,
it's a weird thing, bro. Like,
nah,
yeah,
I think you got to do that. I remember seeing Kim Jong-gi just always fucking drawing everywhere. I was like, holy shit, that's insane. But if you want to get as good as he was, like, that's what you got to do, right? So I think the only people who understand are the people who are in the game,
doing it.
really. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I think so too. Because and you know, to pivot as well, like that's I think a major sign that you can kind of look to see if it's actually something that you want to be doing as well. Like if it's giving you energy, if it's giving you kind of the motivation and inspiration to continue. And that's totally fine if it's something that's not even art related, but as long as you have that thing, that fire that keeps you up and wants you to, continue working on it as well. Yeah, I definitely think it's a good thing to celebrate. Um, but yeah, on the flip side as well, it's just, yeah, it never really turns off either, like it's just a way of being, I suppose, or however you want to describe it. But yeah, even, to bring it back to UFC too, like sometimes I'll see like a certain movement or a crazy like technique and I'm like, oh damn, I need to draw that pose. Like there's so much energy and flow in that. And yeah,
yeah.
I used to post it a couple of times on my Instagram. I don't anymore. But yeah, I have like maybe I'll flash it on the screen now, but I did like back in 2020 or 2021, like a series of artist portraits, like
Hmm.
Paulo Costa, Max Holloway, Justin
Yeah,
Gate. I
yeah,
just drew all of them all the time
yeah.
because I was
Nice.
like, man, these guys are like ugly. Like I need to draw like like the cauliflower ears and the broken nose and stuff. But it's so
Yeah,
so rich to draw, isn't it,
yeah,
as
yeah.
an
True,
artist?
true, true. Yeah, they make really
Maybe
cool
not Paulo
characters.
Costa. He's
Yeah,
actually quite attractive,
yeah,
but
yeah.
yeah,
He's a funny dude, though. He's so
he is,
funny.
man. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
But yeah,
yeah.
he hasn't been active for a while now, though. But what was
No,
his
he really
last
did
fight? Was it
change after
Sean
the
Strickland? He fought Sean
yeah,
Strickland
after
last, right?
Sean Strickland,
Yeah,
that
yeah,
was it.
yeah.
And I
And
think
he
I
just
don't know if he's got any other fights booked because before that was Luke Rockhold, I believe.
yes,
Um,
yes, yeah,
yeah, but
yeah.
he's just never really been the same since Izzy, I guess.
Yeah,
But
yeah, yeah.
I
Because
don't
he
know.
had
That's
so
a
much
that's
hype behind him, and then just like Izzy
yeah,
just smoked him.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then I can't even imagine what that must be like to deal with as well. Like to kind of for such a long time, everyone's hyping you up as like the next best
Yeah,
thing, and then you realize like as Izzy said, oh yeah, there's like levels to this. You're like,
yeah,
oh
yeah,
shit.
yeah. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right, man. But yeah, that's just the reality of sports, I guess, especially
Yeah,
MMA.
for sure, for sure. Yeah, where there's like a clear winner, clear loser kind of thing as
Mm,
well. And it's I can't imagine like all the different emotions that go along with it too. But
yeah,
yeah, I don't know.
for
I
sure.
think it's yeah, as an artist as well, just not every fighter, but the couple of ones that I really look up to, Volkanovski, Rob Whitaker, yeah, just the way that they carry themselves, Alex Pereira as well. There's a lot that you can kind of apply to your own life, and obviously that's not even martial arts related at all, but
Mm,
there's different qualities and traits that make someone resilient, make someone, want to better themselves that we can apply to anything, I think. So that's always really cool to watch as well.
yeah, for sure, man.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. You know what that is? That is the UFC equivalent of me going for a walk and being like, like here's all here's all the thrill
Oh man,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah,
But yeah,
like
cool. So
yeah.
yeah, sorry, get you going.
Yeah, just like how you're saying, like it's really hard to switch off, like just having to observe everything.
Mm,
Yeah, I just find it funny, just looking back at every time that I've done that in the past.
the same
I just
thing,
find it
yeah.
funny. Yeah,
People learn to just be like, oh yeah, that's just yeah. If I'm walking with my friends and stuff, like if I go to Melbourne or Sydney and I'm just walking around, like they expect me to stop and take like 3 photos of just the
yeah,
buildings and then continue. So if I turn
yeah,
around, I'm like gone, like, oh yeah, Dan's just like in an alleyway somewhere like, taking a photo of like a concrete texture or something.
yeah,
So yeah, but
yeah,
it's
for
it's
sure.
fun, I think what it is too, and I was quite intentional of this actually when I was back in uni. But to kind of reiterate, so when I started, I did game design and sound production. That was like my double major in uni.
Hmm.
And the main reason that I was doing game design is like if I was kind of creating worlds of my own and kind of making environments and things of that nature, it kind of forces you to be way more present of the one that you're living in. And I
Mm,
like that kind of mindfulness of being able to be like, oh yeah, this is something that I would never have noticed before if it wasn't for
mm,
art, or at least trying to replicate it. And so that's genuinely why for me personally, I'm much more drawn to like environments and kind of capturing a mood or a feeling more so than anything else. And that's the stuff that I love to paint and draw. So yeah,
nice, nice, nice. Yeah, I think all artists should actually just go out and just experience life and just gather as much resources that way because that influences,
yeah,
for me personally, a lot of my work.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah. I think too. With do you know, like in primary school, did you ever have like a pen license or anything when you had to?
Yeah, yeah, year three, pen license. Yeah,
Year
I
three, yeah,
remember
I think it was the same for me. Yeah,
that.
year three, year four, I don't remember, but the concept too of like the look cover write check of
Mm,
you look cover write check for spelling and things like that, but when it comes down to references as well, and something that I have to actively avoid is like don't gather too many references if you're trying to do a project. Like
mm,
get a couple here and there for either style references or lighting references, or even just like genuinely how something looks. But if it's causing you to make the creative decisions already for you, in that it's harder to kind of tap into what's inside, of you
mm,
as an
yeah.
artist and the
Hmm.
things that you want to create. So
Yep.
when you don't have the references and you literally have to make decisions on the canvas of like, all right, how should I pose this character? What prop should I use? What lighting should I use? When you create those decisions and kind of dictate the rest of the illustration, I
Mm,
think honestly that's the way to kind of have and develop your style way faster.
hmm. True, true. That's right. That's why I was how do I say it? When I see artists just purely just copying images, like yeah, kind of like I don't know. Like I guess it's nice to like study that way, but if it's just solely their shtick, just to copy existing things, is like, oh, that's not really what art should be, right? It should be your own flavors and everything like that. So I think that kind of ties back to what you were saying, just like have your own, like have a bit of reference and let that inspire you, and then have your own energy be the main source of creativity.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It's the stuff that you say. That's the thing that resonates way more with people, and I think that's something that I misunderstood as a student. It's like, oh yeah, God of War is super gritty and like Norse sort of stuff, but it's like, that's the surface level coding, right?
Hmm.
Like the thing underneath it is the story about Kratos learning to be a better man and trying to teach Atreus and break the cycle of all of that. And of course, like don't get me wrong, Norse stuff is cool as shit as well. But I think that when you get to the point again of making the decisions for yourself, whatever that art looks like, it's just number one, way more fulfilling,
Hmm.
but number two, it really forces you to kind of identify the things that you're maybe lacking as well, technically, and kind of plug those back in.
Yep.
And yeah, I definitely find it's just way more interesting too when I see something completely original that I've never seen beforehand, and I'm really getting a sense of this person as an artist. As as they say, obviously, like a picture says 1,000 words, right? So
Hmm.
that's a lot of where that comes from too.
Yep. For sure, man.
So
Definitely.
yeah, cool. I reckon with that, I'm happy to end there. Like
Cool,
that
man.
was the
Yeah, that was
yeah.
a good chat, bro. I enjoyed it very
Yeah,
much.
yeah, likewise, man. Yeah, no worries. Thanks for coming on. But
No, my pleasure.
for an outro too, like we'll just do the standard, like where can people find you? What sort of things are you working on? And yeah, like what's your hope for 2025?
Yep. So 2025, I'm planning to have that Kickstarter ready for my book project for my kids. I'm planning to level up my art in terms of making it much more storytelling based. And where you can find me is just at Warrick Wong on Instagram and Twitter. And hopefully later down the track, it will be YouTube as well.
And once again, just a massive thank you to Warrick for joining me on this interview. I've linked all of his socials down below, so please go check him out. All right, everyone, that's going to be it. Thank you for watching, and until next time, take care and stay safe.